What's going on, everyone? Happy Monday to everyone. Hopefully, everyone is doing well, staying safe, healthy. If you had to take a COVID test, hopefully you have tested negative. If you did test positive, I hope you have a full and speedy recovery with no long COVID issues. It is time now for the Monday edition of the Pandemic Update for Monday, October 23rd. 2023. That's right, we begin another week together, and we start off this week with just 3 news stories today. Then we will continue over to the Walgreens update, which just came in earlier. We'll do some of the states from Walgreens, and then we have a bunch of other things in data to look at, including some states, my city, of course, which quite frankly could get interesting over the next few weeks, and some international data. So let's jump right into it. Speaking of international, Norway's 86-year-old king has tested positive for COVID. They're saying, quote, he's had mild symptoms, but I read more through the article and some other articles. Apparently, he has an extensive medical history, so we'll have to see what happens. And just in the last few years, he has had some medical issues. So once again, King Harald V of Norway, who's 86 years old, has tested positive for COVID and has, quote, mild symptoms. Now we move on to this. This has to do with this is from the BBC, so it obviously has to do with the UK. Sheffield Hospital Trust returns to mask as cases soar. So they are seeing a rise in cases, and because of that, the hospital is returning to masking. And remember, these masks right here, if you stopped wearing them for a while, now is the time to start wearing them again, because we are now starting to transition out of the summer wave. This little lull period that we had over the last 2 weeks, it's starting to end, and we're starting to see places rise again. You're going to see that in just a few moments when we do the Walgreens update. Taking a look now at this, and this is a bad study. Not bad in the sense that we should toss it out. No, it's some bad news that was found in this study. Virtually all children infected with COVID-19 show signs of blood vessel damage, study shows. Kids, these are, people under 18 years old, children that go to school, finding blood vessel damage. Meanwhile, we continue to just shove them into schools without masks, without what's behind me, HEPA filters. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. We need to keep our kids safe. And look at this right here. This actually comes from Philadelphia. This actually comes from my city, Philadelphia, PA. The news about coronavirus and children just got a lot worse. A troubling study by researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, otherwise known as CHOP. It's a big deal. CHOP is a big-time hospital around here. Reports a high proportion of children infected with SARS-CoV-2 show elevated levels of biomarker tied to blood vessel damage. Making matters worse, the sign of cardiovascular damage, again, this is in kids, is being seen in asymptomatic children as well as kids experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. So this is really bad. I will retweet this or tweet or retweet this study out so you can read the whole thing. We're not going to read the whole thing, but wow, this is bad news, and I hope the mainstream media, whether it be your local news stations or the national stations, at least give some coverage to this. Around where I live, I doubt they're going to have time to show this because, well, look what I'm wearing. Yes, Phillies play today. It's a big deal. If they win today, they go to the World Series, which means the attention will go to that, and this won't get any attention at all, which again is why I'm concerned about what's going to happen here in Philly. More on that later on. Moving on, let's take a look at today's air qualities, and it's kind of a mixed picture. We do have green in some areas. So you can see the East Coast, it's not doing that bad. Some of the central region, there's some yellow showing up. A little bit of improvement on the West Coast. Still not perfect. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, Nevada, still not perfect, but a little bit better. It's something we'll have to keep watching as we head further down the line. You can see here, there's a little bit of elevated levels in the south. We'll have to watch the east as we head into the weekend and maybe even into early next week. There's going to be a big warm-up in the east, and that could bring back some bad air qualities. It could also bring back some issues with this heat-related illnesses. So I think we are now going to keep showing this for a little bit longer because there's another warm-up that may be coming for parts of the U.S. And there's been an increase in heat-related illnesses in the Southwest states once again. There was actually an article about a jazz festival. I believe it was in Arizona. I think it was Arizona, where there was a jazz festival and there were several people that had to go to the hospital because of heat-related illnesses. And look at this map. Yep, above average heat-related illnesses once again. Not bad on the east. Not bad. But again, we'll have to watch the east. It could go back up slightly again because there's going to be some mid-80s that's set up this week. This is not a weather forecast video, but we're just, weather and illness and health, they do come together sometimes. All right, moving on to the all-important Walgreens numbers. We're not going to do every state. We're going to do some states. Then we'll do some more states tomorrow. And it may be possible that we do one state twice again tomorrow because, honestly, I don't keep track of which states I did, which ones I don't. I guess I could, but it's just too much. Anywho, Walgreens this week, we're seeing a change. We're starting to see that shift. Remember last week we were watching places like Ohio. There were a few states we were watching last week go higher. Well, now on the national level, we're starting to see a little bit of an increase. The national positivity is 26.4%. Prior week is 25.8%. That's a difference of up 0.7%. You can see that very well here on the chart. The very start of a rise is starting to commence. Total test, 11,616. Prior week was 11,593. So at this time, we are slowly starting to transition into a rise again. And what you see here on the map is the greens are areas that are dropping. The reds and the oranges, places that are rising. These whites are kind of either nothing, not reporting, or flat. And what you were seeing here, there's still, for the majority of the South, it's still a drop. Okay, Louisiana is slightly up. South Carolina is slightly up. The northern states, I would say north of the I-40 corridor, we're starting to see a rise. And that's to be expected. Unlike the summer, in the wintertime, the north rises first, then the south rises. And as you know, in the summertime, the south blows up. Then the north eventually starts to rise as well. Although this summer, it was pretty much unanimous. Everywhere saw a rise at once. But let's just start off with Maine here. Maine is definitely seeing a rise. 27.3% this week. Prior week was 21.2%. Difference of up 6.1%. Total test 33 versus 33. We're going with that's a legitimate rise. But you go next door to New Hampshire. Some good news here. New Hampshire was rising. Now New Hampshire has dropped some. 30% versus 37%. Difference of down 7%. Testing's up 30 versus 27. Massachusetts also seeing a drop there. 21.6% this week. The prior week was 37%. Difference of 15.3%. Testing, however, is down, which means this would be a legitimate drop. 37 versus 46. Do we get anything out of Vermont this week? Yes, no, no Vermont this week. So we come down here to New York. New York, unfortunately, is starting to rise. 42.9% this week, 40.3% last week, 2.7% higher. And testing, it's up big time. 226 tests versus 149. And if we zoom in on this chart, you can clearly see it here. New York State is starting to rise, and we'll have to see. Could this be the start of the winter surge? Pennsylvania, my state, 28% this week, 25% last week. Difference of 3%. That's up. That's not good. And testing's up as well. It's a legitimate rise. 132 tests versus 128. While we're at it, let's just go across the Delaware River to New Jersey. And unfortunately, New Jersey's starting to rise as well. 26.8% this week, 23.4% last week. Difference of up 3.4%. However, testing is down slightly. 410 tests versus 436. Too soon to say whether or not this is a legitimate rise because testing did drop, and I'll show you more why in a minute. When we go to New Jersey's data, you're going to see their hospitalizations are still really dropping. But as you know, positivity is one of the first things that would rise. There's some more states here. Let's look at West Virginia. West Virginia, yeah, really wonky looking chart here because there was a time period they stopped reporting 14.3% positivity this week, 9.5% last week. Difference of up 4.8%, 35 tests versus 21. Let's go down to the south now. Florida, 20.2% this week, 21.8% last week. That's a difference of down 1.6%. Testing is also down, 1,349 versus 1,448. But look at the chart. It continues to drop. The South, for the most part, is not yet rising. Let's see what's going on in Louisiana, however. Louisiana may be an exception to the rule. 18.7% positivity. Prior week was 17.3%, up 1.4%, 107 tests versus 104. But we have to zoom in and take a look at the chart here. Louisiana has a history of going up, down, up, down, up, down. So we can't really read much into Louisiana just yet. Let's go up to the Great Lakes. We'll do a few states here, Ohio and maybe somewhere else. Then we'll go to the West Coast. Ohio is 31% positivity this week, 32.7% last week. Difference of down 1.7%. However, testing is up, 348 versus 281. So it is dropping. Too soon to say whether it's a legitimate drop because I want to see what they come in for cases this week. We've been seeing last week that their cases rose ever so slightly. Nebraska this week is 34.8%. Prior week was 27.7%. Difference of up 7.2%. 66 tests versus 65. This is a legitimate rise. Illinois 31.5% this week. Prior week was 26.6%. Wow. 4.9% higher. Total test 894 versus 871. You can see the chart is starting to rise. We did note a couple wastewater sites yesterday in the wastewater update. If you didn't see that, it's the video before this. We did note a few wastewater sites there are starting to rise. California, 29.4% this week, 29.5% last week. Down ever so slightly, 0.2%. Total test, 480 versus 555. So testing is down. Didn't drop that much. It's on the cusp of maybe starting to rise again. If you look at the chart here, it looks like in the in-between time when they don't do updates, looks like it actually did start to rise a little bit. But at the moment, it says down 0.2%. Oregon is seeing a drop, 20.9% versus 25.6%, down 4.7%. Total test, 67 versus 86. That's a legitimate drop. Two more states will do. Washington, 23.1% versus 26.7%, down 3.6%. Total tests, 247 versus 285. That is a legitimate drop. And let's go up to Alaska. Alaska is 5.9% versus 10%. Difference of down 4.1%. 17 tests versus 10. Alrighty, moving on now. I don't think we're going to do any wastewater scan sites today because we spent quite a bit of time on Walgreens. However, let's go over to the latest variants in case maybe you're new to my channel. And if you are, by all means, subscribe down below. You'll be updated on regular. But if you're new or maybe you just need a refresher, here's what the latest variants are. As COVID evolves over time, it's not the same Wuhan 1.0. We're not dealing with Delta anymore. We're not dealing with Alpha, BA.1. These days, we have moved well beyond that. We're now on the EG.5, which is at 23.6%, HV.1, which is at 19.5%, FL151, 13.5%, XBB116.6 at 10.3%, and if you will note here, we do not see BA2.86, but we do see, note here, there is BA.2. It's back at 0.3%. Don't know what that's all about. I don't think that's how they're counting BA 2.86, but what do I know? Moving on now, taking a look at the latest hospital admissions. Let's refresh this to make sure they did not do an update. They didn't. I think the next one will be on Friday. COVID hospital admissions for the past week are at 16,158. Now let's take a look at New Jersey, where there's 451 people in the hospital. See why I said New Jersey may not be rising just yet? They're still seeing a quick drop, and you can see it here. 63 out of 70 hospitals reporting. Okay, there's still 7 missing, but overall trend is a drop, and their neighbors up in New York State, you'll see that in just a moment, are dropping as well. On ventilators, 25. In the ICU is, on ventilators, 25. In the ICU is 59. Discharges, still quite a few of them, 65. Then we come across the river to Philadelphia, and See, this is another reason why I don't think New Jersey's rising yet, because Philadelphia has been slowing down. 685 EMS incidents on Sunday. Yes, that's well below 700. And let's actually go to the fire department's Twitter page, Philadelphia Fire Department. Here's the weekend total: 1,380. Lowest numbers in a very long time. This is some good news. However, as you may notice, I am wearing this Philly shirt. Tonight is the next game in the series that the Phillies are playing. If they should win tonight, I think there's going to be a big uptick in EMS calls, simply because people are going to go out and celebrate. And, people may get injured. And then down the line, this could turn into a COVID wave as we potentially head into the World Series. Taking a look at the neighboring suburbs of Philadelphia, there are 16 ambulance calls right now. And we're seeing all kinds of things: cardiac emergency, respiratory emergency, seizures, abdominal pain, cardiac arrest, that's never a good one. Diabetic emergency, that's not good. Let's take a look at Chester County. Chester County, we're seeing a whole bunch of calls as well. Heart problems, respiratory difficulty, heart problems, sick person, another respiratory difficulty. Yeah, it's busy in the burbs right now. It's Monday. Monday, a lot of people put things off over the weekends, like someone feeling sick or someone in chest pain. They say, oh, I'll deal with that on Monday. That's what happens. 1,329 new COVID cases on the most recent update in New York State. And some good news about New York State. Look at this trend here. The hospitalizations continue to fall. Eventually that trend is going to reverse. I honestly don't know when that's going to be. I can assume it's going to be after Halloween, but we'll have to wait and see. Right now, New York State is still dropping. You saw the positivity is rising, but it's not being seen in hospitalizations at all just yet. I suspect we may see, like we saw last week and perhaps the week before, we may see a bit of a bump tomorrow and then maybe it drops the rest of the week. I don't know, but the most recent number is 1,254 people in the hospital in New York State. All right, moving on now to the international update, because no other states have updated over the weekend. They just don't. Russia, 4% increase in cases. Weekly deaths up 72%. That's not good. And then we come down to Canada. Cases down 68%. Deaths down 68%. I hope that's correct, but if anyone's from Canada and knows otherwise, please let me know down below. Poland, cases up 43%. Deaths are 8 versus 2. That works out to 300% increase. Then we come down here to Bulgaria. 2% decrease in cases. 32% decrease in deaths. Chile, cases up 17%, and Switzerland, cases up 21%. Both still have not reported any new deaths. I don't know if they're not reporting them, or maybe they just have none. I'll think positive that they have none. Malaysia, 8% increase in cases. Israel, 828 versus 0. They reported none the week before. And honestly, let's not even go by that number. With everything that's going on in Israel right now, we don't know what the real number is. Hong Kong, down 22% on cases and 20% increase on deaths. 12 versus 10. Ireland, cases are down 22%. Deaths are down 65%. Big decrease in deaths. New Zealand, cases now down 86%. I hope that's accurate. And 85% decrease in deaths. Finally, today we will end on Finland, which is down by 79% for cases, and 0 deaths versus 9, which equals 100% decrease. Alrighty, my friends, we will have another pandemic update again tomorrow. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel down below. If you know anyone that needs a reality check, please send them my way, because the winter wave is coming. They need to know that, hey, COVID's starting to rise again, and yes, you need to wear a mask, because it's going to rise much faster in just a few weeks from now. I mean, right now it's just a real minor leveling at the very cusp of rising again. In just a few weeks, that gets a little bit more serious. And I will say this, I'm a little bit surprised and happy. I'm starting to see a few more people wear masks in the grocery store. I had to run to the grocery store on my way home today, and I noticed there were a few more employees masked and customers masked. That's a good thing, but it's not good enough. We need to see that to continue to increase, because this is a serious virus and it has not gone away yet, and it's not going to go away, and it's going to make itself more prevalent and more known as we head through the next few months. Alrighty, I'll see you all again next time. Until I see you again next time, stay safe, everyone. Have a fantastic Monday evening.